Good morning, folks. For first note for you to be doing at home before our next synchronous meeting, I'll be guiding you and helping you out. So, first topic to learn for this week is answering scientific question. That's the title. Or you can say asking question and creating hypothesis. The essential question is how do scientists answer these questions? So in your notebook, after you already created your table of content, go ahead and go to page 4 and start writing these two down as a title and the essential question like the following steps. So once again, on page 4, you're going to see me write down the question and the title. So the title in this case. And just to prevent confusion between the title and the question, because the title could look like it's a question, always draw a line between your title and your essential question to separate it. As you guys can see here, I'm using pen. Even though you will see me mess up later, it is easier to read your note if it's written in pen instead of pencil. And below that, I'm going to write the essential. How do scientists answer question? Okay. And once again, to separate our essential question from the rest of the note, feel free to draw a line. You can draw it on a line or in between, that does not matter. And to separate our main note from any side note you might have to write down or any answer that you need to write down from question inside the note, go ahead and draw this shape that is the main section on the right and a little block on the left. So we'll continue with our note next. A learning target for this week is just to be able to understand what is observation, what is a hypothesis, and a scientific question. The scientific process has multiple steps. Today we'll just focus on the three bolded called making an observation, ask a question, and a hypothesis. We will not focus on the next three steps very much until next week. So for today, just focus on those three. Any key or essential vocabulary that you will probably need to know for tests and quiz, as well as understand the topic, for me will be highlighted in bright color. In this case, any shade of blue and then a bold red to tell you to do something or to pay attention to it is good. So observation is a way to describe something using your five senses or a way of collecting information. Scientists sometimes will also use tools like microscope, a ruler to measure the length of something, a scale to measure the mass, and so on. So here we're going to go back and write that down in our notebook. So after I drew my line, you're going to see I'm going to take a second to read my notes, word it in my head possibly, and then write it in the notebook. Take your time to carefully read something, and the more you reword it yourself, the better you will understand it because you're processing it and you're using your brain to think about a definition. So don't ever be shy about trying to reword it on your own. And if you ever feel like you want to add some example about it, you can go ahead and do that on the left. So you can be like tasting to see if a certain type of ice cream is good if you work for Ben and Jerry, or as a scientist to try different version of protein to see if you can create a vaccine for a coronavirus type, whether it's a new type of flu or a new type of cold, or in this case, COVID-19. So feel free to add that to your left side. That will be more engaging. And I will highly encourage you to do that ahead of our activity. So here I have an example of an observation. So pretend I went and tried to make toast this morning, and the toaster just won't toast. Every time I put a slice of bread in and try to push it down, it doesn't click and it doesn't want to stay down. Could it be the spring? Could it be the outlet? I don't know. Okay, and that's just an observation, something I am aware of. So go ahead and write this example down because it's in bright bold color. That means it's something that's useful. You see me write down EX, for example. And my example could be a summary of something. You notice my observation that I stated there on the slide is quite long. So here I'm just summarizing it. And as you can see, I'm human. As I'm making toast, I was going to put down the word toaster because sometimes your brain can work faster than your hand. So go ahead and summarize it, making toast, but toaster won't click or do not click. Okay. So after you make an observation about the toaster, you can ask question about potentially what could be the cause. A scientific question is just a question based on your observation. So people use scientific method all the time. Could be for what kind of makeup work best on certain type of skin, or in this case, why is my toaster not working? Or what kind of people can be immune to a certain disease, or if you can catch coronavirus a second time. So you can ask who, why, when, what. Any question works. It doesn't have to be those, but those are the most common one. So once again, you see bow blue, and I would write down scientific question. Usually start with who, why, when, where, and what. So here you see me writing that down because it's bright color. Usually what I want you to write down will be in a shade of blue of some kind. And if you ever feel like you need to add additional thing, you can go ahead and add. If you want to write down the full thing to help you out, go ahead and do that. But just FYI, I highly encourage you to learn to summarize things. In our case, our question is, why won't my toaster make toast? Pretty straightforward. So after reading that blue question, why won't my toaster make toast? I would write that down as an example. Example is really great for people to understand things with because it's so straightforward and clear most of the time. You make your observation and then you create a question array. You go to make a hypothesis. A hypothesis is often called an educated guess that answer that question. Educated means kind of based on something like, if I predict the Viking is going to win the Super Bowl this year, that's not an educated guess. I have nothing to base that on. But if I guess that, we will not have a vaccine for COVID-19 for at least a month, that's reasonable because I know in the past it usually takes a year, at least to 2 years, to have a testable vaccine. And since we only have it for the last 8 months, that is a reasonable educated guess. So please write this down because once again, it's bold. It has that big red font for me to know that I need to do something. So here you see me write down hypothesis. If you guys look carefully, I also underline it with observation. If I had a highlighter next to me, I would highlight it. But if you don't have a highlighter, feel free to get a different color pen or just underline it because anything that's underlined is a key vocab. So as you see me write down a hypothesis as an educated guess, once I'm done, I probably should use a highlighter. And if once again, if I don't have it, it's okay. I can underline it. Another word for hypothesis is simply a very good prediction based on something. But it has to answer the question that you propose, otherwise it's meaningless. You're just guessing randomly. So on our next slide, you will see that I have some key fact about hypothesis. The one that I highlighted or make different will be probably the most important thing. So a hypothesis is usually going to start with if an action, then you put the word then a consequences is usually testable and is created with a reason. So just like that note I just showed you, you will see that the if then here is italicized and the word testable, okay, is italicized. Also the one that you need to know for sure. I can also add this to make my understanding well-rounded. Another one is a hypothesis has to be proven because if you don't prove it, you don't know what is true or not. Here I have an example of a hypothesis that an athlete might make. So if I were running 3 times a week and I notice my speed hasn't improved that much anymore, I reach what we call a plateau, I would try to do some kind of change. So my action I'm going to do, that is the change, and I'm only changing one thing, not my outfit, not my shoes, not the time, not the road. I'm going to change the number of time a week that I run. So instead of 3, if I run 4 times a week, then the consequences is hopefully I will get faster by 20 seconds. I don't know that, but it's okay. A hypothesis is just a prediction. And I predict that I'll get better by 20 seconds after 1 month. So once again, that's just an example hypothesis. Now for question, our hypothesis that we have related to the toaster might be something like this. If I try a different outlet, then maybe my toaster will work. Because I know it was working yesterday and it's new. The spring cannot be broken yet. It could not have been stretched out too much yet. So that's my hypothesis. Once again, because this is in blue or a different shade of blue, make sure you write it down. And if I were you, I would underline if then so I can know it better. Okay, so here we're writing down that example of a hypothesis. And once again, I'm underlining my key vocab word, or I would use a highlighter to do that. So if I try a different outlet, then my toaster would make toast. Once again, our main topic or subject for today is to make some observation, to be aware of real life or anything. From that, propose a question like, hey, is this shoes gonna make my feet feel better as a soccer player who played midfield? Or hey, if I were to add another fan to my gaming PC, would I get a more stable frame rate? Okay. And then from that, I'm gonna make a hypothesis or a prediction, right? So if I were to wear this brand of shoes, Adidas, for soccer, then my feet will feel less pain. Or if I were to add a 120 millimeter fan to the side of my gaming computer case, then hopefully my game will be more stable. Last but not least, I would like you to just draw a line once your note is done. And the empty space below that, it could be on this page or it could be on page 2, will be where you have your summary. Your summary has to answer that question that I have at the beginning. That's called the essential question, or it has to contain the key information. So our essential question is, how do scientists answer question? You can write down, they can start by making observation. They can then ask a scientific question. And then last but not least, they can try to have a hypothesis. And we'll wrap that up for this week with that. Thanks a lot and hope to see y'all on our next synchronous meeting.